It is not every day that a grime artist gets to sit down with the Mayor of Greater Manchester, but Andy Burnham is no ordinary politician, and today I think you're going to see exactly why. Andy became a household name with the standoff against the government over the Tier 3 restrictions being imposed on Greater Manchester back in October of 2020. But today, Andy gave us a real insight into how that situation actually played out when the cameras weren't on, and also what inspired him to become a politician and make a real stand for the North. Check this episode out. My name is Nik Nagarkar and you are locked into Culture TV. For the culture, by the culture. Let's go.
Settled, isn't it? You got a real good.
It looks the part, doesn't it?
It does look the part. For a UFO discussion, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. No, we had to have that in for that. So Andy, one thing I've always wanted to ask you is how did you get into politics? And in light of the year that you've had, do you regret it?
Sometimes, I'll be honest, I do sometimes. But on the whole, not. Because in the end, politics allows you to make changes that benefit people. So it's a tough profession. I won't lie. How did I get into it? It was growing up here in the Northwest in the 1980s. Yeah. And I could just see, obviously, everything that was going on. My mum and dad weren't in politics. I think sometimes people think politicians have got all of these connections and families that are always in politics, but mine wasn't. It was simply that I kind of was looking around at what was going on and kind of felt quite angry about it. The thing that probably radicalised me most was Hillsborough, actually. Right. Because I'm an Everton supporter. I have to admit that.
We all know.
You've noticed. And I had lots of friends who were there. Yeah. And I just, for those who don't remember it, just the outrageous injustice of people going to a match, not coming back, but then the powers that be turning on people and blaming them. Yeah. I just think it's kind of brought home that this is the way the North has always been treated. That you can basically treat people as second-class citizens. And it was that really that probably kind of took me from being just kind of politically aware to being quite angry, and I want to change this because this cannot possibly be right. So that I was 19 when Hillsborough happened. Wow. And that was I would say I'd seen the 80s from close quarters. Moss Side, Toxteth, the miners' strike I saw because I was growing up in Leigh and I was at school with lots of people whose dads were on strike.
Oh, it was a mining town, wasn't it, Leigh?
Yeah, Leigh. I live in a little place called Goulburn that had a pit, and when I went to school in Newton-le-Willows, my school bus went past Parkside Colliery every day. So I know it feels like a different era now to people, but it was a very big deal at the time, the miners' strike in that part of, it's just the fringes of Greater Manchester. That was all building inside me. But then at the end of the 80s, Hillsborough happened, and it was like, right, we're just getting treated as I say, second-class citizens here.
Why is it that the North is treated different to the South?
I think it's got deep roots, isn't it? The power of this country is all concentrated in London and the South East. It's always been like that. And actually, if you look at the way our political system works, we're a very centralised political system. Yeah. So all of the power is in Westminster, and therefore all of the powerful people are around that area. And it's all concentrated inside the M25. And the North has always been taken for granted, hasn't it? Over decades, centuries even. And it's generally not where the people come from, who are the ones who are the most wealthy and the most powerful. Yeah. And if I believe in anything, if I came into politics for anything, it was to speak up for the North, basically, and that's what I've always, in my different ways, tried to do.
Do you think that it was that background that inspired the big T3 standoff that we had in October?
I was building all my life to that point. And I didn't manufacture it. I was really clear. I was trying to make it work. Even a couple of weeks before, I was saying to the government, look, just treat us fairly. We've been under restrictions since July. Yeah. Don't just put us under more.
And were you really just being fed through the media rather than having direct channels with government?
All the time. Yeah, there was I remember, front page on the Times, all pubs to shut in the North. It was first I'd heard of it,
So that was when you were finding out about how our city was to be treated.
Exactly. So I was getting angrier and angrier about all of that. But even then, I was still trying to work with them and say, look, just treat us fairly. And they didn't. And looking back, actually, the thing that most irritates me is I was saying to them, to Boris Johnson, right in the middle of, on the day that they were threatening to impose Tier 3 on us, I said, look, we have been under restrictions since July for 3 months. Recognise that and the impact that's had on our businesses. Didn't cut any ice. 3 days later, London goes into Tier 2, and immediately a big check lands for London. And they realised then that they had to backdate the support to us.
And did they backdate the support?
And they did, but you know, it just tells you, though, doesn't it, how this country is run, you know? And so I think, I feel like all my political life in some ways was building to that
It was like it came to a head in that moment, that the moment that sort of went viral on Sky News and across the internet was when you were, I think you were stood outside the Bridgewater Hall, and then you got the phone off Kevin, and it said, well, what it said to you.
Yeah, so basically what happened was, I'd finished the last conversation with them, and I said, I take it you're still going to give us the 60 million, because they'd put that on the table. I said, you can't take that off, you know, just because I've not, we've not come to an agreement.
Because you've tried to push for more. They can't take off what.
I tried to push for more. So I assume that the 60 million still there. Oh, no, there's no guarantees about that. Then I was outside the Bridgewater Hall giving my side of it to the media, and at the same time, a meeting was happening in Westminster, where the government were briefing the Greater Manchester MPs about what was happening, and they said to that meeting, "There's no money," and somebody immediately texted Kevin and said, "You know, you better show Andy this," and he did.
And then it was 22 million they offered you.
Yeah, and then they tried to claim that we'd manufactured that moment, but it was, you know, it was in some ways, as I say, I didn't seek any of it, but in this role as Mayor of Greater Manchester, what's the point if you're not prepared in that kind of situation when it's clear you're being treated wrongly? What if I'd have just sort of, oh well, they're the government, and, you know, I'd have been letting everybody down here. Now I imagine that not everybody agreed with what I did, but I would do it all again in a heartbeat, because if there's anything that motivates me now, it's to get equal treatment for people in the north of England as others in the south.
Do you think what's happened over the past 12 months has sort of equipped you even better to do this job on a second term?
See, I've been in politics a long time. I've been a Greater Manchester MP for 17 years before becoming mayor. And I suppose what I've learned over the years is I know how to stand my ground now, and I know how to get my voice heard. And it takes a time, because when I was a younger MP, I didn't really understand those things, but now I do. You know, I've watched other politicians. I've seen how others do it. I now know how that system works down there. I know the games that they play. Nobody can sort of, you know, pull the wool, because I know how they work. And so I'm in a position where I can be a strong voice. And yes, I think I can go on and do more, to be honest, because I've got the confidence of having done this role now for 4 years. And I'm really clear, you know, I left Westminster because I was sick of it. I was sick of the way they treated the North down there. Even my own party at times, too London-centric. You know, so it's a criticism I make of all of them. And in some ways, when I left that, I left party politics
behind.
And I'm in it because of what this place deserves in terms of the treatment it deserves. And, you know, that is what I find it quite liberating, to be honest, having left that world behind. And I'm just calling it, and I don't play politics with issues. If the government do it right, I'll say so. But when they don't, I'll say so as loudly as I possibly can.
I think over the last couple of years, I think a lot of people will agree with me that we've all lost faith in politicians. The Brexit crisis, then the way the pandemic was managed. And I feel like, do we even believe politicians when they speak anymore? We all know they speak in sound bites. The veil of that mystery of that's gone. We know they never answer a direct question anymore. We know that they skillfully work the way around answering anything. And I feel as a people in Britain, we've just lost faith in politicians. How do you think that could, or can that faith ever be restored in politicians, do you think?
I think you were going to ask me that, how could that have happened? And I'll give you one explanation. Westminster makes a fraud out of the people who go there.
What do you mean by that?
Because when people have to toe the party line
Right, okay.
and vote according to the whip,
Yeah.
it makes them sometimes say things that they don't 100% believe.
Yeah.
Because it's the line, this is what the party line is. Or it makes them vote in ways that might go against some of their principles.
Is that not anti-democratic in a way?
It's the way our system works. And I kind of realised myself, if I carried on just sort of living in that sort of Westminster world, I don't know where I would have ended up by the time I think so many people end up with their political careers feeling a bit burnt by it because of that reason, because they can't be themselves.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, and I think because of maybe the tendency of modern politicians to speak in sound bites, to speak in riddles, it ends up that people are a bit like, what's this? What are they all about, these people? I don't get it. What are they? And so I understand exactly what you're saying. And I felt it myself.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, I was in there for 16 years as the MP for Leigh.
Yeah.
And I felt myself the kind of gap between...
You were Shadow Home Secretary, right?
Yeah. Shadow Health. I was Health Secretary. I was a minister in the Blair government and in the Brown government. So I consider myself really, really privileged. But, I mentioned Hillsborough at the start of this interview. I mean, this is how life is strange at times. I was the minister who went to Anfield on the 20th anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster. And when I stepped forward to speak to the COP, I can only tell you that I knew I was stepping forward to almost like the kind of edge of a cliff between the government I was in and the people. I knew how they
how big the divide
was.
No
faith on that particular issue and on others as well. So in some ways, I was like, the whole conflict about politics was kind of embodied in me, really. The individual me would have been shouting at the government like they were. But I was meant to be the professional politician, and in some ways that conflict, that I was kind of in the middle of that conflict.
I feel like in October it kind of came to that point though where I think a lot of people in Greater Manchester would agree that, which is I think how you've got your new nickname, is that we felt like you were one of us. And I think we've not really, I think the reason why there was so much attention from the news and on social media, because it felt for the first time we've got a politician as such who is actually acting as one of the people. And I think that was the first time, certainly that I've seen that in recent times. I feel very disenfranchised by politics over the years. And I think that was quite a refreshing moment for all of us.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, obviously. But I think politics has got to get back to true representation, you know, and not pulling your punches sometimes. If something's wrong, say it's wrong. Say it clearly. Root it in the reality of people's lives. And I think the mayoral role allows you to do that because in many ways you're elected as an individual more than as a party, if you like. And I think that's why devolution of power, taking power out of Westminster and creating more
local power.
I
think a lot of people don't understand, because the term devolution is thrown around a lot, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand what that means to them specifically. Can you sort of elaborate on that?
It basically means power in our hands, not in someone else's hands. That's the simplest way I can put it. You've got a situation at the moment where half of the Parliament is unelected. I mean, just think about that for a moment. Here we are in 2021, and you've got kind of lords and ladies and baronesses and God knows what in the House of Lords. No one's ever elected them. The vast majority.
So how do they get that then?
They are appointed.
Right.
And the vast majority of them, some of them are hereditary, so it's passed down through their family, but the vast majority of them live in the M25. They've no clue, honestly, I've been there, I know what they're like, they've no clue what life is like in Greater Manchester, yet they're sitting there making your laws in 2021. And I don't understand why people aren't more outraged about that. So my whole agenda is taking power out of their hands and to put it into our hands here.
Because the House of Lords has to ratify whatever the House of Commons does. Is that correct?
It can amend what the House of Commons does.
Right.
And actually, the really odd thing is, acts of Parliament or laws are more likely to be changed in the House of Lords than they are in the House of Commons, because in the House of Commons, the government just has a three-line whip. It can make MPs vote in the way it wants them to. It's only when it gets to the House of Lords where they're not as disciplined as the Commons, where people vote in all kinds of different ways. And most laws are actually made in the Lords.
Right.
But again, just think about that. People that you
Have not elected.
have not had any, who have no accountability to you whatsoever, are making your laws. And, that is what's so wrong about this country. This country is run by the great and the good. It's dominated by London and the South East. And it shows, doesn't it?
Can it ever change?
Well, Westminster, in my view, is it's discriminated against the north of England for a long time. Look at the way the money's spent. We've never had a fair deal. Can it change? I think this is our best chance of it changing. Not waiting for them to change themselves, but for us to becoming more
change on them.
Strong about what we want and our voice to get louder.
Yeah.
And so I kind of really feel that we're building something important here. And Greater Manchester is at the forefront of this movement to take power out of Westminster and do more with it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that will, in the end, answer your point. I think it will connect people better with politics when it's people from our own area speaking on issues that matter to us in a way that people can relate to.
If you had a magic number of money, let me think, I don't know, 22 billion, say.
Ooh, where did you get that figure from?
Let's say you had 22 billion pound to spend on Greater Manchester, no red tape. You've got 22 billion to spend on the people of Greater Manchester in the city. How would you spend that money?
I would spend it first and foremost on transport. I think the biggest thing that's holding us back is the transport system.
Okay.
If you go to let's say a city in Germany or France, it's just light years ahead of where we are. And I think we've got to be aspiring to be one of those world cities. Where you come out of the airport and you've got taxis, all of the same standard modern taxis, quality transport links straight into the city centre, and we haven't got that at the moment. And so £22 billion doesn't go as far as you think these days, but I would invest it in massively expanding Metrolink to all communities in Greater Manchester. Huge improvement in the bus system, making it all electric, bringing down the cost of fares. I think that is the single biggest game changer. It would massively improve people's lives and it would help people connect to jobs and opportunities.
How do you feel that Greater Manchester is going to recover from this pandemic?
Slowly, if I'm honest. I don't think it will be instant. I think the damage that's been done is deeper than people might realise. Do
you think we're even seeing the damage that has been done yet?
No, not fully. And I think what's coming is a mental health pandemic after the COVID pandemic. I think people are going to take some time to recover from it, and it's going to be a 3 to 5 year job. I mean, I know that might sound a bit depressing, but I think that's the fact. Think about this. There's been a 6-fold increase in destitution in the Northwest since the pandemic began. 6-fold. Wow. It's doubled nationally, but it's increased 6 times here. That's the number of households in destitution, which means people living on less than £100 a week.
6 times?
6 times. And the reason why is because our economy is has been more exposed to the pandemic. So we have more people working in live events, live music, sport, hospitality, tourism, all of the industries that have been most impacted by the pandemic. And not all of the people working within those industries have had help from the government. A lot of people have been excluded from public support.
No, I mean, I'm a musician, and I mean, I'm lucky that I've got a business, but if I didn't have that and I was relying solely on my music income during this time, I'd be in a really bad situation. A lot of musician friends that I know are also in that sort of really bad situation.
I think people in the music industry have had it really tough, because obviously a whole trade's been taken away. I know people have tried to do things digitally, but it's not easy, is it?
No.
And then you look at our venues. We've been working over the last year to keep the lights on in the places like Gorilla and the Deaf Institute, and there's other venues that are struggling. Then you get the bizarre situation where the government negotiates a Brexit deal where they turn down visa-free travel for musicians in Europe. I mean, what's all that about?
This is ridiculous.
That is one of our best exports. I mean, from our point of view as Greater Manchester, our music industry is without doubt world leading. And
personally, we're traveling to Europe every single weekend, and like now once we were able to do that again, I mean, we don't even know what the implications of this are.
Yeah. Well,
can it change? Can they get the visas back?
Well, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Because Europe offered it, and it would have been much more in our interest to accept visa-free travel for musicians than it probably would be for Europe, because there's more traffic going from the UK to Europe than is coming from Europe to the UK.
Without a doubt.
So why turn that down? It just says to me again how sometimes people down there just don't value what we've got. They don't understand the creative and cultural power of the Manchester music industry, and it's shown, isn't it, by that decision? Because you would want to give no barriers in front of you would want to put no barriers in front of one of our best exports, and yet that's what they've done. Yeah.
I'm just hoping that can be reversed somehow. I mean, there's a lot of us that are hoping that there is still some kind of magic negotiation that can go on.
I think it possibly can be in time, but it's.
Do you not think it'll be in the short term, though?
It could be, but I think the relationships between the UK and Europe are not great, obviously, are they? And it might take a bit of time for some of those things to be put right again. But we're hearing that there are impacts on a whole range of industries in Greater Manchester. The fashion industry, I think, has been quite badly hit by all of this. So it's just going to be a tough time, isn't it, in the next few years? But one of the things that gives me hope is the way this city region was powering on just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
If you look at the city centre, it's amazing. I can't even relate to it from the city centre that I came back to when I left university. So I came back here in the early 90s, determined to work here, not London, and couldn't find a job anywhere.
Really?
Other than a job as an unpaid reporter on the Middleton Guardian, which was my very first job.
Really?
Wow. It was.
Is it still going, the Middleton Guardian?
I don't know. I think it might have merged with something now. But I loved it. It was brilliant for me. But that was, and I look back then, the Greater Manchester of the early 90s, it is so different today. But I also think we're not punching our weight either yet as a city. There is so much more we could be. Yeah. We are, get your head around this, the fastest growing digital and tech hub in Europe. We are. And it's a growing success story. Yeah. And I think we will get it back. But I do think we have suffered some damage here, and there will be a sense of progress being a bit interrupted for a little while.
Do you think Greater Manchester spirit will overcome all of this?
Oh, without a doubt. It already has done, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We've been through a lot over the last...
We're a different breed here, aren't we?
Definitely. Best people in the world. I mean, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
No, me neither.
I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. No. I like visiting other places.
Same. I have this conversation all the time.
I wouldn't mind a bit more sun. Yeah. There's what did Ian Brown say? We've got everything except a beach. I wouldn't mind a beach if we could find one of them. But no, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else in the world. I think there's people here, they're a rare breed of warm, generous, decent people. And in the end, it's the people that defines a place. Yeah. But actually, if you look around, what else we've got, I think people have been exploring our countryside over the last... Even we have, haven't we? We've often not realised what we've got on our...
I found new trails in Manchester and never knew existed.
No, I have. I live in the Wigan Borough. And some of the places I've been to, we've all opened our eyes to what's on our doorstep. And I think we maybe aren't taking things for granted as much as we once were.
I think the amazing thing about Manchester is you can be in like the city centre, and in 10 minutes you're in the countryside, or what would look like the countryside. You could be down at Fletcher Moss in Didsbury in like no time at all. Yeah. And then you can't see a building in sight.
I know, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? And I hear so many people leaving London saying, because there's a lot of businesses now relocating here, and people saying, God, I can't believe I didn't do this earlier. You can have such a... Manchester's got what London has got in terms of the bars and restaurants, but then you can be out in the countryside, as you say, within...
And at a fraction of the price.
And at a fraction of the price. Yeah. So we've got it all.
We've got it all.
And we've got the people as well. At least people talk to you here rather than stare at you in silence on the tube in London.
Well, yeah. So a lot of people will be thinking that it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to win this next re-election that you're up for in May. But how important do you think it is that people should still go out and vote? Or vote via post, or whether it's in person?
I definitely don't take it as a foregone conclusion. You know, I think every election is, you know, I treat every election as though it's, you know. It's,
Are you as nervous about this one as the first one?
I'm always nervous about elections, and anyone who works with me on elections will know. The famous Kevin, who showed me the text message, he'll tell you that I'm the worst candidate going, because I'm always a bit nervous about elections. But no, I will work hard. I'm going to be putting forward a very big campaign pledge on a London-style public transport system for Greater Manchester, and I hope that gives people a reason to vote, because it is a big change that we'll be proposing. And I think the government are going ahead with this election in May.
Yeah.
Because it suits them to do that. You know, why not wait until July when it's a little bit warmer, a little bit safer?
Yeah. I
think they want a low turnout.
Right.
And they think that will work better for them.
What do you think that would give them more power?
Yeah, I think they think it's more likely that they will do better on a low turnout than if there's a lot more people turning out to vote. So, you know, I really want to get the message over that people, you know, should vote after this pandemic. However you've experienced this pandemic, whatever it's done to you, you know, it's really important, I think, that coming out of it, you kind of make a statement one way or another. You know, you might like what the government's done, and fine, if you want to vote that way, do. But I would say a lot of people here have not been treated fairly.
No.
And this mayoral election, I would hope, if I could put it this way, and when I took that stand last year, you know, if people were then to endorse me with their vote come May, I think it would kind of send the message back down there again to say, look, you know,
this is what we want.
Well, they tried to punish us a bit. You know, they tried to divide. Oh, Liverpool are great, and you know, they tried to do a bit of divide and rule, and they tried to sort of put me in the, you know, on the naughty step from their point of view. I just think if people were to come out and vote at this election and to give me their support again, and I hope they will, it really does send a quite strong message back down to Westminster to say, look, you know, we have been promised a northern powerhouse. We've been promised fair treatment. We've been promised investment. So, you know, where is it? You know, and I think it will kind of, you know, it would help sort of draw a line under that whole thing. Yeah.
Well, I think the people of Greater Manchester, we need a voice for the people. We don't need a politician that speaks in sound bites. And from what I can see, you've more than proved that. So, good luck with it.
Thank you. Well, it's nice of you to say that. Yeah. I will keep doing what I'm doing. I won't have got everything right over the last years. I'm sure people will agree with me on some things, disagree on other. But all I can say is I'm in it. When I say I'm in it for the right reasons, what I mean by that is I'm in it for this place, the people of this place, the people here who actually do deserve more because they are so brilliant. Yeah. And I think we are getting somewhere. I think our voice is getting heard, but we can probably do a bit more. And for me, it feels unfinished business. You know, if people could give me their support and a good mandate, I think we can go on to really great things.
How long's the next term? 3 years? Because it's a different term than government.
It's because this election was delayed.
Right.
So normally it would be a 4-year election, but because it should have been May last year.
That's right. Yeah.
So it will be 3 years.
Right.
But that's enough time for me to do a lot of the things that I'm promising to do, and in particular, reform the way the transport system works, and that's going to be my big pledge at this election.
Well, fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks a lot, Nick.